Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's actually nice to be here. Quick way to start this. I just want you to read that. And I want a volunteer. Can somebody read that out for me? I just want anybody. Prof Allen, do you want to just read that? Sorry?
It's a foreign language.
I just need somebody to read it out loud. I'm not going to ask you to explain what it is. I just want you to read it out loud. Okay, good. Do you actually understand what that means?
I did lesson 1B, but I just passed.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you an idea of what it is that your students feel like when they sit in front of when they sit in the classes and when they read their textbooks. The fact that you can read those words doesn't mean that you understand them. Okay, so I'll come back to this because I'm actually going to do an experiment with you guys during my presentation because that's the fun I get out of it. Some stats from a student that I'm busy doing research on. I'm busy doing a doctorate on supporting language acquisition at Northwest University. And this is actually my test group. Now what we've done with them is we gave them a literacy skills assessment, standardized test, and that's what it looks like for this specific group. Now this group is actually, it's not one of our worst groups. It's kind of they're kind of one of the better groups that we have at the university. Yet you'll see only 2% of those groups have literacy skills on the level of matric and higher. 71% of those students, they have literacy skills which are on a level of grade 8 and lower. So those are the guys who sit in front of us in the class. I did a vocabulary size test on them. I tested 142 students. As you can see, I put some stats on there. The average vocabulary size for that test is 7,400 words. Word families, actually. Just to draw the distinction, if you think about the word run, you can have ran, running, you have different forms of the word, but the word run then counts as one word family. So that's kind of the size of their vocabulary. The test has a maximum of 14,000 word families, and so the average for the specific group works out to 7,400 words, more or less. Okay, so that's kind of who we're working with. There's a bit of a disconnect, actually, if I look at that, between what they say there, the 71% that's lower than grade 6, and the average vocabulary, because that vocabulary size is actually not that bad. We're still delving into what that means. So what is language? I just Googled what is language, and that you can see my reference there. And it pops up with a little definition right at the top. So that's where that definition comes from. But basically what language is, it's a collection of tokens representing something in the real world. And we have a shared understanding of the meaning of those tokens. And so because we share the understanding of the meaning of the tokens, we can communicate. So if I hold this up, we know this is a bottle. So when we go away and we talk to each other and we say, I'm going to drink a bottle of water, we know that it's one of these. So the fact that we share our understanding of what a bottle is makes communication possible. And basically, a large collection of those tokens, that's what language is all about. Without such a language, meaning can't be conveyed. We can't communicate. Now, this can be verbal and it can be gestures. There's different ways of communicating. But without a language, we can't convey meaning amongst ourselves. We need language to communicate. And specifically why our students need to know English is because for the most part in our universities, meaning is conveyed by way of the English language. So that's the language that we use as a language of learning and teaching. I need to breathe every now and again. So why is vocabulary size important? Firstly, a long time ago, we used to believe that when you acquire a second language, the best way to do that is to teach grammatical structures. We don't think that anymore. We think that the fastest way to improve your second language skills is by improving vocabulary size. So the more words you know, the better you are going to be able to understand your second language. So what Krashen says is, if you've got a piece of paper like this, just like that. For you to be able to understand that, you need to understand at least 95% of the words on that piece of paper. If you understand 95%, and the percentage varies, some people makes it a little bit higher, but it's around 95 to 98%. If you understand 95 to 98% of the words on that page, you'll be able to figure out what the rest of the words means. Okay? So Krashen uses the concept of comprehensible input. He says that this text will be comprehensible input if you understand at least 95 to 98% of the words on it, because the rest of it you'll be able to figure out from context. Laufer and Raven Oskolowski said that for you to understand 95% of the words on a piece of paper, you need to have a vocabulary size of between 4,000 and 5,000 words. If you want to understand 98% of the words on the page, your vocabulary size has to be about 98%. 8,000 words. All right, so that's just kind of what our students' vocabulary size needs to be for them to be able to make meaning of whatever is written in their textbooks. It becomes important when you select your textbook that the number of words that is used in your textbook matches up with the number of words that your students knows. Because if they don't understand 95% of the words in the textbook, they're not going to make meaning of what's written in your textbook. So just to kind of make a synthesis of what I've got on the board there, you need about 4,500 words for a student to be actually to make meaning of the words in your textbooks. All right. That's why vocabulary is important. If you don't know the words, you're not going to be able to understand the text and even the conversation that you have in the classrooms. So let's get back to that. I asked Derek earlier. Those are the same words we had in the beginning. So let me just see. That's the pointer. Anybody know that word?
From legs.
Sorry?
Legs, legger.
Oh, that's the verb. Yeah, so it's lex legere. All right. So she knows it. Who else actually knows what the word means? Kind of related. Okay. Just that one, for example, the said. She knows. She studied Latin. Okay. I'm going to get back to this again. I'm just making the point again is that we often think that we can read words, and the fact that we can read the word means that we understand it. No, it's not true. The fact that you can read a word doesn't mean that you understand the word. The fact that you understand the word doesn't always mean that you understand the word. So let's get to that context, to the construct of knowing a word. And that sounds a bit strange, but I'm going to tell you two stories. The first story is the word debris. If you don't know the word debris, you encounter it in a piece of text. You go to the dictionary and you look the word up. It will say rubbish, amongst others. So what you are going to probably want to do is, if your mom tells you to take the trash out in the mornings, you're going to tell your mom, okay, mom, I'm going to take the debris out quickly. That's not right, right? Okay, because debris doesn't really mean rubbish in that sense. So you kind of know what the word means. It means rubbish, but it doesn't mean rubbish. It means something like rubbish, but it's not quite that. So unless you've seen an accident and you've seen the pieces of wreckage kind of thing, you won't have any kind of a mental picture of what debris means. All right? So if you were to fully understand what debris is, you must have encountered that in its proper context, and then you'll have a fuller understanding of what the word means. The prawn to a salmon thing is, those of you who's friends with me on Facebook, I put the first bit about debris on my Facebook page as a status, and I've got a mate in Australia who catches a lot of fish. So he says, no, I must use proper words so he can understand it. So I told him the story in terms of, fisherman's law. And so it's this little mommy salmon and the kiddie salmon, they go swimming. and there's a prawn kind of lurking in the rocks. And the kitty kind of jumps back, and mom says, don't worry, it's just a prawn. We eat these things, man. And the lady says, no, but I'm never going to eat this stuff. It looks like a cockroach. I'll never eat it. So tomorrow night for supper, we have some prawns, and it's all dressed up in, little butter sauce. And Boetie eats the prawn, and he loves this. So at first, when he looked at the prawn, he saw something that's a cockroach. So he knows the word prawn, and he associates it with this vile little animal. Next thing, he encounters it in a different context. Now I understand it's food, and it's actually it tastes jolly well. So now you've got a broader understanding. So the next morning, Boetie goes off swimming, and there's a fisherman on the boat, angling, and he's got a prawn as bait. And he's bargaining that Boetie doesn't have the completest understanding of what a prawn is, because prawn can also be bait. You see, so when you words, the more context that you encounter a word in, the fuller your understanding of the word becomes. So when we say you know a word, that's just such a loaded kind of context, because it means you've seen it before, but you don't know from Adam what it means, or you've encountered it in lots of contexts, and you've actually got a good idea of what it is. And it gets confused by what we call polysemic words that are spelled identically the same, but they have different meanings. So to know a word is a difficult thing. So when we talk about to know 4,000 words, we mean that in its particular context where you encounter it, you must have a significant understanding of what it means in that specific context. All right. Can we fix it? Can we fix this problem with our students whose vocabulary is not what it should be? So let's try something. That word means to read. It's a verb. It's in its infinitive form, and it means to read. That word comes from posum posipotui, I think, to be able, and that's the first person singular. I am able. That word simply means but. That's not difficult. It means a none, right? No, it means not. Intello comes from intello, intellego, intellegere, intellexi, intellectum, I think. And again, in that form, it's first person singular. It means I understand. And verba comes from verbum in neutrum. That's the plural form of it, and it means words. So now you have a sentence: to read, I am able, but not I understand. So I can read these words, but I don't understand them. All right. So if you have some kind of a codex, you can then make meaning. So if a student comes to a piece of text which he doesn't understand, and he can get support in context, he's probably going to be able to make meaning of that word. So what I'm proposing in my study and what I'm going to test, and we know this works. So I'm just going to do some refinements to the test, but we know that this works. Words, sorry, I missed that. I just want to go back to that. What I'm proposing to do is to, in a piece of electronic text like that, we've actually done this before, so we know it's possible to do it. If you double click on a word, you can, normally it selects the word. When you select the word, that word can be put into flash memory, and you can actually then go and look that word up in a database, retrieve the meaning, and populate the pop-up window with it. So if you click on a word, it will open up a little pop-up window with an explanation on the word. Now I see there's a lot of iPads here. You can already do that with an iPad. You just tap on a word, it opens up a little screen, and you can get an explanation. The beauty of this is that normally when I read a book, if there's a word that I don't understand, I first try to see if I can get by without knowing the meaning of that word. So I try to derive context of the whole passage without actually knowing that word. If I can't, then I need to go up, find a dictionary, look up the word, then go back to my text and carry on reading. So there's a whole interruption of my train of thought if I have to look up a word. What I want to do is, I did it specifically on the screen here. Look at where that word is, the pop-up window. It's above and to the right. If that pop-up window was sitting at the bottom, it would be obscuring the following text. So it would actually make it difficult for you to read. All right? So what I want that box to do, I want it to touch the word that it's explaining, but I've already read the text at the top. So my natural eye movement is to the right, and I'm not obscuring the next text. So I want that pop-up to pop up there, specifically. I want that kind of contiguity when I have the pop-up, which is the first point that I'm making over there, that the pop-up needs to be contiguous in the way that it doesn't obscure the following text. Some other things that's important about what needs to go into that pop-up window is you have to have, you're trying to teach the students the second language. So your first explanation needs to be in that second language, but it must be an accessible language. So we know that people learn words in order. So if he's learned the first 4,000 words, but he hasn't learned the 6,000th word already, when you have a pop-up window and you populate that window with words, you must use the words that he already knows. Because you can't use words that he doesn't know to explain words that he doesn't know. That doesn't make sense. So the language must be accessible. Then they recommend that if it's possible, and it's difficult in our country because we've got such a lot of languages, but to have that word explained in his first language, because then you make the connection between the first and second language. Multimedia helps. There are some things that you simply can't explain in text. If you want to explain to a person what it looks like when a jaguar runs or when a cheetah runs, when they have the ball eventually. Sorry. I shot for the Lions, so I'm not allowed to make rugby jokes. You can't really describe in text what it looks like when a cheetah runs. You're not going to get it. But if you see a video of a cheetah running, you're going to get it, right? So sometimes you need a specific type of media to explain the concept properly. And then, again, they recommend that you give examples of what this token is and what it is not. So if I take the example of debris again, I can tell you that the bumper that fell off in the accident, that's an example of debris. But the peelings of the potato, that's not an example of debris. So what that does is it enables your learner to distinguish between the finer nuances of what the meaning of the word is when you give examples of what this word is and what it is not. All right, to get back to my experiment. Anybody now, having gone through this exercise, who can tell me what that word is? What's that word? Getting closer. It's I am able. I know, so because we've studied Latin. So that word, can you remember? But, not. I understand words. Just in case you were doubting whether this works. It works. And what it does is, because you support the acquisition of new vocabulary within its proper context, you are aiding the acquisition of those words into your vocabulary. It does work. And what's more about this, there's a consistent correlation, a consistent strong correlation between the size of vocabulary, reading comprehension, and ultimately performance, academic performance in the subject. We haven't, I keep on saying we haven't. They haven't shown that the correlation is causal, that there's a cause and effect between vocabulary and reading comprehension. But there is a correlation. Wherever there's a high vocabulary, there's high reading comprehension. In terms of authenticity, I think personally, this is probably as authentic learning as you can get, because it's in the act of reading where you are supported to acquire the vocabulary that you need to carry on reading. So in terms of authentic learning behavior, I think this is quite a good way of going about that. Some handy links if you want to go and explore it. That top one is the one that I used to test the vocabulary sizes. You can go and test your own vocabulary sizes. As I say, they test a maximum of 14,000 words. They're in the process of developing a test that will test up to 30,000 word vocabulary. Thank you.